Welcome to the SBI Podcast, offering CEOs, sales and marketing leaders ideas to make the number.
Welcome SBI Podcast listeners and video podcast viewers. My name is Mark Synek and I'm a principal at SBI, a sales and marketing consultancy dedicated to helping you make your number. With me today is my co-host and one of SBI's partners, John Staples. How you doing, John?
Doing very well, Mark. Thanks.
To all of you listening or watching, thanks for joining us today. Our purpose is to help you make your number by speaking with business experts about things you are dealing with in real life in your company. Today's guest is Mike Yardley. Mike is the Chief Integration Officer at VML. VML is a global marketing agency that delivers forward-thinking ideas and solutions for the world's most influential brands, like Coors, Coors Light, Dell, Gatorade, and Southwest Airlines, to name just a few of them. They were founded in 1992 and joined the world's largest communications services group, WPP, in 2001. VML has more than 2,400 employees with principal offices in 26 locations across 6 continents. As Chief Integration Officer, Mike leads the integration of VML's expanding global offerings. He leverages more than 20 years of digital experience to ensure clients receive superior digital strategy and execution across all communications channels, technology, and creative solutions. Mike has a passion for combining marketing and technology to solve client needs and create a competitive advantage in the marketplace. And Mike was one of the agency's leaders who advanced VML's strategic move into web development and digital marketing, and this goes back to 1995, so he is a longtime member of VML's leadership team. Mike, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. Glad to be on.
All right. Mike, one of the reasons I'm looking forward to this is because although companies now increasingly understand the importance of marketing strategy, many of them don't know where to start when they evaluate theirs. Would you agree with this point?
I do agree with that point, yes.
So, Mike, I think we're going to use a section of SBI's revenue growth methodology to frame this up and really guide our conversation, specifically pages 111 through 122, which deal with marketing strategy. If people want to follow along at home, they can download a copy of our methodology at www.salesbenchmarkindex.com/2016-report. So, Mike, are you finally ready to go?
I think so.
Yeah.
Great. In our view, there are 5 steps to marketing strategy development. I'd like you to talk broadly about your approach as you work with clients to strategy development at VML.
Yeah, so, as I look at as I reviewed your 5 steps, I think those they're kind of a great outline and are not different necessarily. We may call them different things, but at the end of the day, I think we align very, very carefully with you. When you look at that first step, that planning step, what's interesting about that is, as it relates to clients that we work with, many will think they have their planning and have a lot of the pieces in place, but when we really dig in and start talking with them, we very quickly find out that they're missing pieces, that they might not necessarily have all the information that they need, that they don't have all the right players identified. Typically, where we see the biggest gaps is things such as coming to terms with what is the right KPI. What are the things we're going to measure that make a difference? That's one big area. Another big area that we see is really truly understanding who are our target audiences and why are they our target audiences. So we find that to be the kind of things that we have to dig into typically. And if we don't get those things defined correctly, we almost always run into problems as we head down the road a ways. Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally. Hey, as you talk about the planning phase of developing the marketing strategy, is there something else that companies need to start with besides the planning phase?
I think at the very beginning, there's always got to be really a situation which is, for me, it's the definition of success. My problem is that with a lot of the clients I deal with is we enter into it with them, and they really can't tell me what the definition of success is. And what I tell them is then you and I are both going to fail, because if we don't have a definition of success, it doesn't matter what we do and how good we are. At the end of the day, there's nothing to measure us on to say that we succeeded. So we almost always spend quite a bit of time there at the very beginning of an engagement, which then it really kind of drives the planning process.
Okay, so defining the objectives first and then getting into the planning section of it. How about the next couple of phases to that? How do you advise your clients on that?
So looking at organization and engagement, what's interesting is as we start talking with clients who don't really have kind of an omni look at their customer bases or don't look at integrated communications, we immediately begin looking for and understanding where are the gaps there. We do gap analysis essentially, which is to say, what do you have and what do you not have, and what are the expectations of the marketplace, which helps us begin to drive and understand from a planning perspective and from an engagement standpoint, how are we going to go about doing that? And one of the interesting things about that is almost always there will be organizational and systematic issues, which are prohibitors or things that we have to be careful of. So what we try to do is truly understand those, and then to begin to build our plans and our engagement processes around how do we start to mitigate those. We may not necessarily be able to resolve all of them, but at least we understand what they are, and we build plans that allow us to build as rich of an engagement platform as we can while we kind of build the rest of the pieces.
You know, something you said when we asked you the first question about the gaps in strategy, marketing strategy development really intrigued me. I'd like to go back to it if I could, Mike.
Sure.
You said that sometimes or often one of the gaps you see is around who is the target audience. And that's kind of maybe not surprising, but it shouldn't be the case, because if you think about it, if the organization has done the market research correctly and all the pieces that come upstream of marketing strategy, and furthermore has done the corporate strategy development, as they should have, which is also ideally upstream of marketing strategy, those two pieces should feed into answering the question of who is our target audience. And yet that's still a gap that you frequently see?
Yes, sir. And the reason I would say that's the case is I agree with you. Corporations and companies should be doing that research, and many of them are. However, that being said, many times those methodologies and those processes are steeped with tradition. They're steeped with a lot of people who say, I know my audience, I know what they want, I know who they are, I know what they look like, and they end up impeding that process. Does that make sense?
It does, and especially as the target audience is changing so rapidly now for most industries.
Got it. You got it. And not only that, but it also might be that your existing target audience isn't the right target audience of the future.
Yeah.
So if we build plans that are all around what you do today, and what you're doing today is not enabling you to reach your corporate and the goals that you have, then ultimately you're going to fail because we're not expanding your horizons.
Yeah, very interesting. Before we continue, I'm sorry.
With that, one of the other things that we like to look at is everybody looks at their competitors. It's a very common thing that everybody does. But what very few actually do is look at their competitors and try and use their intelligence to determine what they're going to do, not what they are doing.
So in your view, it's all about, the gap is really about looking forward instead of looking at where the customer and the competitor is at the current time, correct?
You got it. And most people, I'm just being honest, my experience, an awful lot of companies they live in the moment of now, because everything else is so overwhelming. But the problem is that we're moving so quickly. If you live in the moment of now, many times you're going to get trumped.
Hey, Mike, I noticed that you mentioned performing a gap analysis as one of the things you recommend to your clients. Is that because they typically don't know where the problems are, and the gap analysis is the first step to identify where they might need improvements or where the opportunities lie?
Yes. So, or depending upon how large the organization is and how fragmented the organization is. What I find happening in larger organizations that are still running very hierarchical is that you'll have a lot of gaps as it relates between sales function versus marketing function versus op functions versus customer support functions, or as it relates to vertical market 1, vertical market 2, vertical market 3, or as it relates to regions or globality.
Makes sense. Before we continue, Mike, I'd like, if we could, to take a brief break to make our audience aware of another way to find SBI content. And when we return, we'll do a deeper dive with you, Mike. We'll be right back.
Making your number is hard. Your problems are complex. Complex problems need complex solutions. Introducing the SBI Magazine. Read in-depth stories written by award-winning journalists about how your peers have overcome their problems to make the numbers. When you need more than a tweet, social post, or blog article, turn to the SBI Magazine. Go to salesbenchmarkindex.com to subscribe.
Welcome back. My name is Mark Synek, and I'm a principal with SBI. With me today is my co-host and one of SBI's partners, John Staples, and our guest today is Mike Yardley, Chief Integration Officer at VML, the global marketing agency. Today we're discussing marketing strategy with Mike, and we're using SBI's revenue growth methodology to do this, specifically pages 111 through 122.
Before the break, Mike shared with us his approach to marketing strategy development and how to think about it, as well as a little about VML's approach. Mike, very early on, you have to start evaluating your company's brand. Would you agree with that perspective?
Yes, I would. I believe that brand is very, very important. What I would say is that I think that many people don't necessarily, when we talk about brand, maybe they don't understand the definition of what the brand is. So they look at it as a logo, a tagline, our colors, the imagery that we use, which those are all components of a brand, but they are not the brand.
Let's start there then. If you would, give us your definition of a brand, because we actually agree with you on this.
Yeah, so my definition of a brand really is that the brand needs to be something that when it is crafted and when it is put together enables my company to be differentiated in the marketplace and to be identifiable in the marketplace. And everything that I do and say and deliver upon has to be put through that filter to make sure that it's consistent, that it's driving that identification, that it's driving that point of differentiation. And it's something that we are constantly evaluating and looking at. Some would tell you, and I agree, that a brand needs to be consistent and should never change. I would tell you that a brand does evolve, though. That there is a place and a time when we need to move from point A to point B, and we need to understand when that happens in the marketplace, and we need to be ahead of the curve.
Interesting. So what I heard you say there is really how to measure brand differentiation, and you mentioned differentiation quite strongly. So can you measure brand differentiation? And if so, how do you go about doing that?
So brand differentiation is hard to measure. At the end of the day, your differentiation is going to primarily be measured by your success in the marketplace. And as well as there are a number of categories of things that I can add to that. So I can look at things like brand perception measurements. I can look at things like customer satisfaction. I can look at things like I can look at primary research that's being done, or even panel kinds of researches that is being done that enable me to look and see how does my brand compare to other brands in the marketplace, and to analyze that and to see am I progressing? Am I seen and perceived in the way that I think I should be, or is my message not really being clearly differentiated? Does that make sense?
It does. It does. So if you would, talk about brand perception measurement. You mentioned that term specifically, and it kind of interested me.
Mm-hmm. So brand perception measurement is the idea of essentially doing primary and secondary research. So it might start with, for example, we do lots of social listening analysis. So we for a lot of our clients where we're engaged with them, a part of what we do is do sentiment evaluation and brand evaluation as it's being discussed in the marketplace by customers and consumers and the general public. And from that, we can do analysis which helps us to understand, is your sentiment positive? Is your sentiment negative? Are people spitting back some of the words that are important to us or some of the attributes that are important to us? Or is none of that coming out in the marketplace? So that's one kind of thing that we do that we find to be quite effective. The second piece is to do kind of primary research kind of things, and that can be in a number of ways. You can do customer research, which is fielding panel research, questionnaires over the internet, questionnaires in person, questionnaires through the mail that begin to say they begin to look at things like how do you perceive the brand, and you craft the questions in such a way that you're getting a real good feel for how those perceptions are coming across. And then you have to do that consistently. You don't do it once. You create a baseline, and then you're doing that research in the same manner on a consistent basis, so you can track and understand what kind of a difference you're making and if you're moving the needle of that perception. That's the second kind of way that I've found that works quite well. The problem with that, of course, is there's no instant gratification there. It takes a while to build that and to understand that. And then the third piece is using third-party companies that field panels and so on and so forth. WPP has a number of research companies that do that, where I can go then, I can say, I want you to do this kind of research for me, and they already have the panel set up and can do that quite rapidly. That's another way of doing it.
Hey, Mike, if I've got multiple brands within my company, and obviously a limited investment in some of those brands, how would I determine how much to invest in one brand versus the other?
So that has to start with, from my perspective, that always starts with an analysis of opportunity. So some would tell you, well, you go with the brands that you're doing most of the sales with. And that's decent, but that entirely, you're missing then the opportunity that might come along, because all you're looking at is your gorilla in your portfolio, and your gorilla is not normally the one that you have the issues with. Many times it's your tertiary brands where you have the opportunity. So I'm always trying to analyze and understand, where are my opportunities? And I do that by looking at the marketplace and understanding what competitors are doing, what the marketplace is saying, and then I try to align my metrics, my dollars and cents, which is to say, if I look at, let's say that I have my main brand, I'm going to do that for sure, and I've got 3 other brands. If of those 3 other brands, 2 of them are 5th or 6th in the marketplace, and one of them is 3rd in the marketplace, then I might go with the 3rd. But if the 5th and 6th one are in the 2 high growth markets, I may need to consider whether I go for those or not. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. So it's not just the size, but it's also the growth mode and the extent to which you basically have to put wood behind that arrow, correct?
That would be correct. And then the final piece is, how does all of that fit into my overall strategic business plan and business objectives? So if I'm, just make it up, but if I'm a company and my company we make polymers that protect homes from environments, and that's what we're all about, and we're going to be the best at doing that, and I have a product that's all about protecting cars, I probably better be very careful about, do I want to edge into the car marketplace?
Mike, I believe from our conversation a couple of weeks ago, you're familiar with SBI TV, but I'd like, if we could, to take a quick break and educate the rest of our audience today on how they can find and subscribe to SBI TV. So we'll be right back with you, Mike.
You are watching SBI TV. This is a monthly web TV show featuring guests just like you, executives trying to grow their revenues. Each month, you can peek behind the scenes and watch your peers discuss their strategies for how they make their numbers. You are not going to want to miss this.
Welcome back. My name is Mark Synek, and I'm a principal with SBI. With me today is one of SBI's partners, John Staples, and our guest today is Mike Yardley, who's the Chief Integration Officer at VML. Mike, before the break, we were discussing brand. The thing company leaders sometimes forget about their brand is that it should define the company and the image of the company, not only in the eyes of customers, but also for the company's employees and for the company's business partners. So would you talk a bit about that?
So yes, that's absolutely correct, and I agree with you 100%. Typically, when I'm talking to clients about brand, when I'm talking about what we're going to do with the brand, I always actually start with the employee. Because in my opinion, brands are breathing, living things, and particularly in today's world, if you don't experience the brand, and the experience starts with the employees, if they don't get it and if they don't deliver on it, you have no chance. I don't care how much money you put in the marketplace, because in today's world on connectivity and everybody talks to everybody else, you ultimately will not succeed. So I'm a big proponent of you've got to get your employees on board, and you actually need to invest and understand how you're going to go about doing that. It's not as easy as just saying, here's our brand playbook, go read that and make it happen. That's not going to buy you much. You actually have to put the game plan in place for how you're going to make that brand come to life within your employee base, and how you're going to do that every day, every week, every month, and how you're going to actually make your employees a part of making that come to life. At a partner level, I would also agree with that. But I would tell you that normally what I say is if what I'm doing in the marketplace is right, then it should be good for my partners, because my partners are typically in the same marketplace. So really there, the tweaks are minor as compared to the employees.
Well, this is kind of a corollary question, or an adjacent question, I think, and this is not a new phenomenon, but over the last 10 years or so, we've come to understand that because of social media, a single bad experience can jeopardize your entire brand image with employees, partners, and customers. So what I'm interested in is how has this new reality affected the way that you and VML advise your clients?
You're correct. I guess the first thing that I would say is that we advise our clients not to knee-jerk react. There was a point in time in the old days when we didn't have social media and everybody wasn't connected. We really, quite frankly, most people ignored a lot of stuff. They just kind of let it lie, because after all, we had complete control over the messaging and the brand, and there's always going to be some outliers. And as things have moved on, now that's not the case. One bad apple can spoil the whole batch. That being said, however, you can overreact. So I'll give you a perfect example. I have a client, I won't name them, but they're a global client. They do production out of China. They had an issue with the production batch that was quite bad, and they wanted to go out immediately and start to talk about it. And what we advised them was to wait 48 hours and let us monitor what was going on to see if it got volume and what happened to it. And what we found out was that it actually spiked in the first about 20 hours, and then it just dropped off the end of the table. So if they had done what they were going to do, what they would have done is they would have perpetuated the problem versus letting it go away. So not every instance is the same.
You know, I want to go back to something you said earlier. It's a fascinating topic, and I think our audience would enjoy hearing your position on this, Mike. And that goes to, starting with the employees and hiring the right people. It's our position that success is 50% the performance conditions and 50% the talent that you put into those performance conditions. So you mentioned, reflecting of the brand, or the employee's reflection of the brand, and then the hiring those. Is there something that you recommend to your clients around how to identify folks internally that reflect the brand and making sure we maintain that, as well as how do I make sure that I'm hiring the right people that are reflective of the brand?
Let me answer the second question, because I think it somewhat answers the first one too. When I am working with clients and we're defining a brand, I actually I want to get HR involved with that, because ultimately we want to start screening and we want to start training the people that do interview processes to begin to look for people that fit their brand profile and fit their culture. And that becomes very important, because what you end up with is that you may have people with a great amount of talent, but if they don't fit the brand perception and the culture, no amount of the talent in the world is going to ultimately end up delivering on your brand promise. So from my perspective, understanding who they are and how they fit in is equally important to their talent and capabilities. I can teach somebody lots of things if they fit my profile. If they don't fit my profile, it's much harder for me to take somebody who, if I'm a customer service-minded organization and it's always customer first and it's always about taking care of them and nobody else, and I have somebody who's clearly a grouch, who thinks about themselves and only themselves, I probably need to pass on them. Does that make sense?
Oh, I couldn't agree more. I think that's great insight for our audience, and they'll be excited to hear that from you. Okay, we are going to take one more break. If you liked listening to Mike today and want to access more peer-driven best practices, here's some information about the SBI blog.
Each day, you receive hundreds of emails, tons of text messages, countless telephone calls, and sit in too many meetings. How do you find ideas to make the number with all this noise? The SBI blog filters all this nonsense for you and presents only first-rate ideas to make the number. Simplify your life. Subscribe to one blog and read the best content. Go to salesbenchmarkindex.com and subscribe today.
Welcome back, everyone. Mike, let's tie this off, if we could, for the audience. I'd like you to speak, if you would, directly to them, and specifically to the marketing leaders who we know are listening today. What are the 2 or 3 things that they should do immediately following this show to evaluate their existing brand and marketing strategies?
So that's really hard. There are so many things, but I'll try and whittle it down to a couple. I think the first thing that I would advise any marketer is to be willing to be transparent and to be able to look at themselves and their organization in a very frank manner, to try and cast off all the political things and the things that make such a difference, and start to look at ourselves in new ways, to understand where we're at really and where we need to go as it relates to the marketplace. In today's modern marketplace, in my world, you've got to always be ahead of the game, and being ahead of the game means you have to always be willing to evaluate yourself frankly, and to always say there's a better way to do it, and how can I make that better way happen. And right along with that, I would say is beginning to look at marketing tools and information in new ways and to look at it in a practical sense. And what I mean by that is that, for example, big data and personalization are big topics right now. Everybody wants to do it. Everybody says they should do it. But reality is very few people understand what it takes to actually do that right. So what I tell my clients is, be frank with yourself, understand what you're capable of, understand what your organization is capable of, and learn how to start with a crawl and do crawling really, really well before you move into walking and running. And look for the milestones. What are the things you're going to tell me that I've progressed myself to the point where I can move on to the next the next stage gate in that?
Nothing like finishing strong, Mike. Fantastic. Great points. Okay, what does all this mean to you, the audience? It's pretty simple. Sales and marketing teams cannot make their number if marketing leadership doesn't help them by providing a clear marketing strategy they can rally around and turn into action. This is why you care. If you want to make sure you get this right, get a copy of this year's research report called How to Make Your Number in 2016 at salesbenchmarkindex.com/2016 report. If you feel you'd like some help, you can have one of our experts lead you through a workshop which will focus on strategy development. Go to our website at salesbenchmarkindex.com and learn how to request a workshop.
Mike, thanks for letting us put you on the spot today. Our audience benefited greatly.
Thank you very much for allowing me to come on the show and get on the bully pulpit and do a little preaching. I'm passionate about this subject, as everybody could hear, and I really encourage all of you to continue listening to these broadcasts. I think they're very helpful.
We also want to thank you, our audience, for tuning in. This show has become very popular, and with this popularity comes great guests like the one we had today. So thank you, and we wish you much success as you try and make your number.
This has been the SBI Podcast. For more information on SBI services, case studies, the SBI team and how we work, or to subscribe to our other offerings, please visit us at salesbenchmarkindex.com.